Welcome everybody, this is Jkob for PokerPro, and today I have a huge honor to have this special guest, an Italian poker player, Francesco Candelari. Hey Francesco, how are you?
Good, very good.
I see you're enjoying the sunshine.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, so the reason we are doing this interview is basically there are many reasons, but one of them is definitely because you have an interesting start to your poker career that I would like to mention. And the second of all is obviously that you are participating in the GG World Series of Poker Circuit at the moment, the ongoing series on GG Network. You're being sponsored by BetKings. You're doing a lot of funny stuff next to it, like Twitch channel with Maria, which we will touch in the later on. And I would definitely like to kind of get your impressions on that one. But to start things off, I guess the word is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have an interesting story because I started poker only in September 2018. It was a little bit unexpected. I started for fun at the beginning. I always thought it was a game that I liked, but I never played beside a few amateur games with my friends. And then I started at the beginning. It was probably normal. I was mainly losing, but I was playing in mainly cash game at the beginning, not very expensive cash game. But then as I am a competitive person, I decided that, well, I mean, I think I have the potential to do better. So let me try to learn a little bit. I found a coach or a mentor. I started to watch lots of videos. I started to follow those PokerPro. I mean, those that are considered the top rags.
Yeah.
And I started to read books. I started to study the maths, so all the mathematical side of poker. And I thought I could apply the psychological side of poker, which I had. I come from international relations, and in international relations, what you have a lot is meta communication, right? So people say one thing, but in fact they mean something else. Whenever you hear something, and not only when you hear something, but when you see a way, a behavior, an action, a small detail, you have to understand what it means in the overall context of that situation. And I think in poker, even though it's a completely different situation, you're not in international relations, but in a way you are, because there are international people, right, all the time. No, I mean, you have to understand, okay, that small detail, what does it mean in that situation? Can I use it to my advantage in the game or not? And that's how I started. I started to win, in fact, mainly in tournaments. And then I started to play more and more. And yes, and 2019, at least according to the pros, was a pretty good year for me.
Okay, so basically to recap, you're not playing poker seriously for even 2 years now. It's less than 2 years, right?
Yes, seriously, it was January 2019.
Okay, and you had no background in poker prior to that, as you said, just some
zero
funny games with your friends, right?
Yes, as I said, from September 2018 to January 2019, I was playing amateur, mainly cash game. When I started with tournaments, the first big tournament was in Rosvadov last year at the end of January, and I got 4th place.
That was the Colossus, right?
No, this was it was called the Spanish Poker Festival.
Okay, yeah. There are so many. There are so many already.
Yeah, there are so many.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear, like, this is something we haven't touched before, you having a background in international relations. And I also studied similar thing, and I can see how this can be applied to poker, because there is a lot more than just like words and talking, right? There are like facial expressions, gestures, and everything to help you kind of identify if somebody's speaking the truth or like being honest. And this is probably one of the most important skills, I would say, at live poker, right? And
absolutely,
having experiences that can just be a great like bonus, right?
Yes, and also I would say your social skills. In fact, sometimes people think that a poker player, since he's someone that spends lots of time on the poker table or maybe plays a lot online, is a little bit not really a social person,
antisocial
right?
maybe.
Yeah, antisocial. But in fact, I would say that a successful poker player is exactly the opposite, because you really need to be good at understanding other people. So you need to be social. You need to be understanding of what does it mean exactly. And I would say it's not only live tells, but also the attitude of a player. Sometimes you have a player that is fearful. So you know that if you make a certain action, he might fold a certain hand because he's not confident, right? Or so you need to understand situations, right? And what is interesting is that, I don't know, you sit at a poker tournament for 10 hours in a tournament, and you have so many situations, and so your intelligence, if you want social intelligence to understand the situation, might make the difference.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement, and I completely agree. And I think this is one thing that even makes poker so exciting, right? It's not just a game of cards. There's so much more involved. Obviously, there is skill. There is like a lot of information to be kind of learned. But at the same time, there is actually social skills, as you mentioned, reading people. And even in online poker, you have a lot of other things that kind of come in handy when you are a poker player. Speaking of which, you are predominantly a live poker player, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. Now, I mean, obviously, we want to touch the current situation with the coronavirus, COVID-19. It kind of changed how things are done around the world, like dramatically. And I would assume that for a live poker player, it's pretty much the same.
Yes, it's a tough time, I have to say.
Yeah.
It's a tough time because, unfortunately, what we have come to realize, I mean, to be very honest, is that poker rooms might be one of the best places where a virus can spread. Because you stay lots of time with the same people in the same room, and you touch the same objects all the time. And those objects pass from one player to the other, namely the chips, right?
Yeah.
So,
and cards, right?
Yeah, and chips and cards. And so basically, of course, I mean, your exposure is high. So right now I'm living in Minsk, in Belarus. In Belarus, there are still some casinos that are open, and you could go there if you want, but I don't for this reason, because I think it would be unsafe from my side to do it. So of course you have to adapt to the online. Online is different. It's very different. And I would say it's different both because there are certain things that you cannot use. So all the situations, the social situations that I mentioned before, they are not, it's not possible to use them online. There are other things that you can use. Of course, there is more technical side of the of poker, but there is also something, I mean, people are less afraid to play certain hands. I see that online poker is way more aggressive than live poker. There are certain hands that I see when they open cards and I say, nobody would ever play live. But not only because I think there is really a psychological dynamic. There are certain people would be ashamed to open those cards in a live tournament, but they are not ashamed to do it.
I mean,
online, right?
when you're playing at home in your shorts, nobody sees you, right?
Exactly. They don't know who you are. Who cares?
Exactly. And I mean, obviously you can play more tables at once, right? So maybe your tournament life is not as valuable. Maybe if you have like 10 tournaments at the same time, you're probably maybe less protective of that, even though that is not the mentality you should have. Probably does affect how some people play, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true. That's not something that I was able to adapt yet. So I still play only one, maximum 2 tournaments at a time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because I still want to, even though the dynamics are different, I still try to maximize my understanding of that table, of how players are playing certain hands. And if I play, and of course, if you play 6 or 12 tables, how can you understand one? You have no idea of what that player is actually doing on that table. I mean, you almost play like a robot. I mean, and if you are a good robot, okay, maybe you are still successful, but it's still a robot. And I also play for fun and to enjoy it. And if I'm a robot, I don't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I guess just finding a balance, right? But I can see the point that you're making here. Having 10 tables, you cannot observe opponents, right? You're just basically
Right.
looking at your cards. It's even hard to spot dynamics. So you're just basically like kind of cutting yourself out for all that information, additional information that you could have on the players.
Right. Sometimes, I have to say, no, I mean, of course, everyone speaks about PO Solver and how PO Solver influences the game and all these softwares. And sometimes I think I've studied a little bit PO Solver, but I didn't find myself in it. And one of the reasons was, okay, when PO Solver says you have to raise 40% of the time, fold 20%, and 3-bet another 40%, right?
Yeah.
And I always think, okay, my decision is not based on a balanced game. It's only based on what I see there. So I'm a situational player. But if I don't see the situation, then of course, I mean, those programs come into the picture, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're not an expert at those programs, then obviously you focus on what you are an expert on, right?
Exactly.
Great. What about like maybe do you think like what do you find positive about online poker? Is there anything that you really like, maybe even like more than at live poker? I mean,
I'll
many
be very
people would
honest.
argue like having a comfort from playing from the home, etc. Maybe.
Sure. I mean, I think this is very much goes into whatever is the feeling that you have actually, I mean, for poker. My feeling personally is more for live poker. But I can totally understand that for some people, online poker is more interesting. For sure, you can play more tables, especially, I don't know, I would say even more in cash game than in tournaments. Because in cash game, even in live, let's say, whereas in live tournaments, normally the dynamics change by the time that the tournaments, that the blinds go up, right? So at the beginning of the tournament is a certain dynamic, then is another dynamic, then is another, okay? But in cash game, no. The only change is the table. So basically, if you have certain players, the dynamic might be of a certain kind, and if you have other players, it might be of another kind. But let's say the consequence of action is way more similar to the other, right?
Yeah, true.
So in that sense, what I think is that, yes, if you play cash game, maybe being more robotic is better. So it might be more profitable if you play online cash game in a certain very strict technical way and very disciplined way.
Yeah, okay. What about for the future, like when everything passes, when everything goes back to normal? Are you going to play live poker only, or is online poker something that you still want to kind of at least explore to a certain degree?
I haven't decided yet. Yet. For sure, I mean, now that I stepped into online poker, as I'm a competitive person, I want to explore whether this whether I'm able to succeed here as well. Let's say in a way that is similar, or why not better even than in live poker. But for sure, as I'm really waiting that time that the first big tournament reopens to have my buy-in and my seat at the chair.
Cool. You mentioned success, so I think it's a good time to talk about your success a little bit. But first of all, just like an off-topic question, when was the last time you played live tournament or live poker?
Last live tournament I played was in March. I was in Belarus, where I am right now, for Belarus Poker Tour, and that was the last time I played a live tournament.
Yeah. Did you know that it was gonna be your last for a while, or like?
I had no idea. In fact, to be honest, I was planning. I was ready. I already had plans to go to Sochi for the EPT.
Okay.
Which was supposed to be at the end of March. And then I found out that Russia closed borders. That was the first step. They closed borders to Italians because Italy was very affected. I'm from Italy myself. And then even they canceled the tournament. After Sochi, I was supposed to go to Barcelona, and they canceled that one as well. And I said, okay, then let's stay home.
And now we are where we are, right?
Yes, then now we are where we are.
Okay, great. So hopefully it comes back to normal as soon as possible, right? So we can all go to the live tournaments and kind of feel the excitement of live poker.
Sure.
We were just about to talk about your successes. Given the fact that you're not playing for even 2 years now, those results are quite impressive to me. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people will agree. I'm not going to mention every one of those. I watched a couple of YouTube videos. You were on the final table of the SSOP, for example, Slovak Series of Poker, which you won, right? If I'm correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Correct.
And you were at the WSOP Colossus tournament where you had a great result. You were at about 3 final tables of those big tournaments you mentioned, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about this a little bit. Maybe any other results you want to mention to kind of maybe even brag a little bit, because why not? Because those are like respectable results. And also, yeah, those final tables. Tell me the story about that.
So, well, I won 2 tournaments last year. Both of them, I would say, medium size, not very big size, but not very small either. So medium sized tournaments. One was the Slovak Series of Poker main event, which was in end of June, beginning of July last year.
Okay.
And then the second one was in November in Rotterdam, was a WSOP ring. So I have a WSOP ring. I'm very proud of it.
You should be.
And which was a deep stack tournament in Rotterdam. They both have very funny stories. So the very funny story about the tournament it was in Bratislava, the Slovak Series of Poker. It's very funny because I didn't want to play. So and I'm a triathlete. I mean, I was semi-professional in the past. Right now, I just do it as a passion. So I live most of the year. I mean, except for now in Vienna. And at that time, so Vienna and Bratislava, they are 70 kilometers apart. So I said, okay. I didn't want to play the tournament, but I said, okay, I take my bicycle. I wake up at 7 in the morning. There is a turbo flight starting at 10. There are 70 kilometers. So I have enough time, if I start at 7 from Vienna, to go to Bratislava, leave my bicycle in a hotel, and then most likely is a super turbo, in fact. And I will be busted, and I go home in the afternoon. Okay.
Sounds like
I stayed there for 3 days. I was there for 3 days.
And you ended
so
up.
I never. And I ended up winning. But the funny story was that there were many times at the beginning of the tournament where I was almost hoping to bust. I remember one time I had only 8 big blinds. I open my cards. I have ace queen. Very tight guy on my right. He opens, and I know because, as I said, I mean, my skills were also, I mean, on psychology. So I know he has a super strong hand, but I go all in. I have ace queen. I cannot. Okay. Everyone folds back to him. Snap call. He has queens. And I get my ace. And then beginning of day 2, I have 11 big blinds, and I'm in a similar situation. And again, I go on. And then you start to think, okay, if things are really meant to be, okay, they are meant to be. I'm gonna stay here, and that's how things go. So yeah, that's a little bit of the story. And the other thing I want to mention on the ring I won is it's a little bit funny because at a certain point in the tournament, especially during the final table, I was not the chip leader in the final table. I was the chip leader for a long part of the tournament, but on final table, I was 3rd or 4th in chips. And I started to look at the ring, and I think, oh, that ring would look so well on me. and I start to think that, yes, that ring has to be mine. I don't know, maybe sometimes you get self-convinced that something is going to happen. But I really thought that ring would be mine.
Interesting.
And in the end, it happened.
Congratulations on that one, for sure. And like an amazing backstory to the first, like the first tournament. I had a few funny situations, but this one, I mean, obviously, like planning such a bike trip and then staying there for 3 days and even winning the tournament kind of adds up the cherry on the top of the cake, right?
Right.
Yeah, so really amazing, and yeah, huge respect for that one. You also mentioned, I know we talked a little bit before the interview about a heads-up situation that lasted a shit long time.
Right.
It was kind of an interesting concept, an interesting switch that happened there. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I think, sometimes, as I said, I mean, I'm a former, I've been doing triathlon semi-professionally, no? And I've been doing Olympic triathlon. Olympic triathlon is
okay.
you run for 10 kilometers. You swim for 1.5 kilometers, bike for 40, and run for 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's in a way it's an endurance,
a lot of a mental challenge also, right?
Exactly. So it's the same that you have to do in a marathon. I've been running marathons as well. I've been running the New York Marathon, for example.
Oh, interesting.
And so basically, I think oftentimes a poker tournament is like that. And in marathons, what happens is that sometimes at a certain point in the marathon, even the top ones, I mean, the ones who win the marathons, they have a moment when their body performance goes drastically down.
Mm-hmm. Like a
dramatically down.
Or...
Yes, exactly. And I think, and their best skill is to have the mental strength to overcome that. Okay. Yeah. And I think this is very much true for a poker player. So what happened is that, yes, we had this heads up, which was super long because it was the final day. We start at 1 p.m. and we start the heads up at midnight.
And which tournament was that?
This is Slovak Series of Poker main event, right? Okay. So we start the heads up at midnight, and we normally heads up don't last that. I mean, they last maybe half an hour, 1 hour, because people play more aggressively, because I mean, there is soon a situation where you go all in, and who wins, right? But this was not our case. We were both super tight. So it was really an endurance marathon. After 5 hours at 5 a.m., we were still there and still had almost equal stack.
Okay.
So I think for those watching was super boring, probably because we were super tight. I remember one time I fold 2 pairs, and I made the right fold because he had a flush. But how many people would fold 2 pairs in a heads up? I think very few, right?
Especially, so anyway, as we said, after being tired and everything.
Exactly. But the key was that at a certain point, I noticed that my opponent is giving up mentally. I see he starts drinking a little bit. His attitude, really his physical attitude on the table start to be more relaxed. There I start to think, I will win this tournament.
Yeah, now you got
because
him.
He's giving up. He's giving up. I see. We just have to wait the right time. And the right time comes when he somehow pretends to win the tournament with 10 deuce.
Okay.
So imagine we are playing very tight. The board, there are 2 kings on the board. I have a king. I have king 9 in my hand. And I barrel 3 times. And there is a deuce on the turn. And I go all in, and he calls.
With 10 deuce.
With 10 deuce, thinking that I'm bluffing. But of course, I'm not bluffing. I mean, because in that situation, we have played 5 hours super tight. It wouldn't be profitable for me to bluff there. So
this is super interesting. Yeah, it shows kind of like the breaking point, right? The breaking moment when, like, if he regards everything that was going on, how tight you both were, and everything, he should have easily folded at any point.
So you are in the interview. You look normal, but it's just that I don't think you want. Right?
No, it's not a problem. I mean,
it's not a problem. Okay.
We're gonna mention Marina anyway because you do a channel with her, so why not, right? And also, like, this is an interesting thing to mention for everybody who's an aspiring poker player, especially for tournament players who play tournaments for 8, 9, 10, 11 hours. Do sports, right? Do some sort of physical activity because it will definitely help you.
Absolutely. I don't think if it has to be sport, it can be something else. I mean, but do something that trains your endurance.
Yeah, exactly.
That
And just
trains your mental strength.
mhm.
It can be sport, it can be yoga, it can be
Yeah.
something else. I mean, but in my opinion, yes, you in order to get at the top, you
Yeah.
need to have something that, in that sense, I think that the mentality of the winning poker players is the
Mhm.
same mentality of
Yeah.
sports people who are winning people.
Definitely, definitely.
It's
And
the
it's
same.
so interesting to see now that the conversation developed. You had no background in poker like 2 years ago, but yet you are doing a lot of things that actually helped you a lot with poker,
Yes.
right? That you could implement. And that is like really, really interesting to see. And it goes to show how like versatile poker is, right? How like everything that you learn throughout life can be used in poker to get better at it.
Yes, I mean, I think when I started to play poker, I was thinking, you know, that's one of the best role games to
Yeah.
explain life,
Okay.
because you have many situations in poker that are somehow replicating life situations,
Mm-hmm.
but in miniature, right? In a very small context.
Yeah.
People think, oh, it's just, I mean, people who don't know poker might think, oh, no, it's just, I mean, it's just a game, or some people might consider it gambling. But in fact, there is lots of psychology, there are lots of interactions. And, well, if you have it in a real situation, what happens is that maybe they are very loud situations. In a poker
Mm-hmm.
table, everything is like miniature, like very
Yeah.
small, but it's there. So
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
you know how to move the real situation into poker, you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah. That's a really interesting thought, and I do agree with that 100% for sure. Yeah, so I mean, you seem to have quite a lot of fun at poker, which is always amazing, right? To keep the fun at what you are doing. Um, I would like to kind of go on now a little bit on what you're currently doing. For those of you who don't know, GG Network is hosting a WSOP Super Circuit online series. I think it has around 100 million in guarantees altogether. There are like 18 rings up for grab, right? WSOP rings up for grabs. Like for those of you who don't know, I don't know, Boris Becker is the official ambassador for the series, for example. And it's basically ongoing. It's going on right now. It started on May 3rd and it's going to conclude on May 31st. The reason I'm mentioning this is because Francesco is also participating in the series. You're being sponsored by BetKings and you are actively playing it, and you already had some nice success, right? And you also have a lot of opportunities, so to speak. So yeah, tell us a little bit about this. How did it start? Like what were the first impressions? What was the big, not even a score yet, but a good jumping point for where there's going to be a lot of opportunities, right?
Right. So we are in partnership with BetKings. It's one of the partners of GG. So
Mm-hmm.
and it's very interesting because they offer a platform where you can play casino, you can bet on esports, on
Mm-hmm.
sports, and also play poker. It's interesting because I mean I met them. Uh, because they were in Vienna as well. They were in one of the live tournaments in Vienna, and I don't know. They gave me also somehow a sense of community that
Mm-hmm.
is always interesting while you play. And together with them, we are streaming. So we are streaming for 9 times during this GG tournament. So
Okay.
not every tournament,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
9 of them. We stream on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays. So we did already 2 weeks, and we have 2 more weeks.
Okay.
It's interesting because, well, first of all, I have to say, the differences with live is that one thing is that the field is much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, if the field is much bigger, what it means is that, let's say, if in live you have 500 people in a tournament, the times that you go all in for and you play for your tournament life are, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, let's say. If you go very far, maybe 7 or 8. But in an online tournament, if you have 4,000 people playing, the times that you go all in and you play for your tournament life are maybe 20 times. So let's say the variance, or let's call it, I mean, more bluntly, the amount of luck that you need to have is much higher in order to go on. Of course, if you make mistakes, if you're not a good player, luck is not going to help. But even if you are a good player, you still need a much higher amount of luck than you would need live. So, and that's one thing. In terms of, so we played at the moment, we were in the first 2 weeks, we were ITM in two times out of the 6 that we streamed. Not big money for now. The best result was I was first in one tournament, which is the main event. So I was first in my day 1, which means I qualified with a very good stack for day 2. Day 2 is going to be on Sunday, 31st of May. And I have 75 big blinds, which is very good, very playable stack for that time. Of course, as I always say to myself, and I'm not streaming alone, I stream through the channel of Marina Hakskevich. She's the very good poker player from Belarus, number 1 among female poker players in Belarus. Her channel is Marina Poker Star with double R at the end on Twitch.
So just to say it again, Marina Poker Star with a double R on the end. Feel free to check it out, everyone. They have like a really entertaining and educational content. And I speak from experience because I have watched it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it's true, we try not to stream only the game, but also to discuss the game, to discuss hands. We invite guests during the streaming. So we try to make it a little bit of a show, right? And not only a traditional stream. And so as I was speaking, the main event. So the main event is going to be on Sunday the 31st. And yes, we have lots of hope on that, but we also have hopes on the next 2 tournaments, which are the Bounty Hunters on this Tuesday. And on Thursday we play also another tournament for 500. So these are the tournaments we're still gonna play. Until now, I have to say, I'm happy, very happy, and hopeful for the main event. For the other tournaments, 2 ITMs out of 6 is normally a very good rate. But of course, it also depends on the amount of money you get. So, I mean, it wasn't so high.
Yeah, obviously.
For now, it's okay. But as I say, I mean, normally in online, you don't play one tournament. When you play one tournament, you play many tournaments at the same time because of the field is so big. So one tournament is to get close to the money. The second tournament is to get in the money. The third tournament, when you are in the money, oftentimes there are still 500 people left. So it would be like in a live tournament, it would be just the beginning, right? So basically, that's how you are. Even now on the main event, I'm very hopeful we are in position number 30 overall. But there are already 800 players qualified.
For day 2.
So basically, we play a second tournament on day 2. We will see.
So it really is a marathon, right? In terms of that.
It is. It is an ultra marathon.
So like, are you going to play all the events, or I don't know exactly, like, are you going to play all the events in the WSOP?
Okay, so that's interesting. I'm not going to play all the events because as I was explaining,
some are really high rollers even, right? Like 25.
Yeah, the high rollers are beyond my bankroll. But even on the other events, I don't play all of them because some of them are at the same time.
And you mentioned you try to.
And focus. I said I prefer to focus on one, maximum 2. But for example, if I wasn't qualified for the main event, I would play the main event PLO. The buy-in is the same. I played PLO, and in fact, in cash game last year, I was more successful in PLO than in Holden. But in this case, since day 2 is gonna play at the same time of the Hold'em main event, and I have such a good stack in main event, I prefer just to focus on that. I will be also on stream, and that's gonna be it.
Yeah. And you're streaming tomorrow and on Thursday, right? You said
Right,
to,
that's
right?
right,
So
right,
yeah.
right.
Well, I definitely,
Always
yeah.
9 p.m. or 9 p.m. Central European
time. Yeah. Well, I definitely wish you all the best of luck in all those tournaments.
Thank you so much.
And it sounds like a really interesting event. There's a lot of things going on. There are huge fields. How are you finding the games? Are they are they wild? Are people tighter maybe with the higher buy-ins, or is it just all over the place? What's your experience from
in one word? In one word, crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
In one word, crazy, because I think the ranges are way wider than what I find in live. Especially, at the beginning of maybe the first 2 hours, people are still careful.
Okay.
But then after a certain point, it's just there is lots of craziness going on.
Okay. So basically,
also,
go ahead.
No. I just want to mention that for example, I've seen hands even at the beginning of the tournament that were surprising for me as a live player, because when you have 100 big blinds or even more, sometimes you don't go all in with ace king.
Yeah.
Ace king is a strong hand, there is no doubt, everyone agrees. But is not necessarily a winning hand.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
if you go all in for 100 big blinds. So live, I don't in 1.5 years, I don't remember. I've never seen in 1 year of playing someone going all in with ace king for 100 big blinds in tournament.
Okay.
But online, I've seen it many times.
Okay. So we can definitely say that if you focus, the games are profitable, right? Online.
Sure. Absolutely. I think again, you need to be ready to have to stand the high variance, to stand the very big fields. But I think the game can be profitable as well. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So everybody's invited. If you want, do join the WSOP circuit on GG Network. They have some amazing tournaments. The games are crazy, as Francesco said. They're even doing I think COVID charity event, which is a really nice gesture, and much needed in these times. And as I said, I wish you all the best of luck in those tournaments. And I think this is pretty much, I think we kind of rounded up nicely with everything you want to say. I did wanted to ask you about one thing, since you mentioned you're a live player, but you did send me some anecdotes. I think a couple of days ago, you had a funny situation on the online cash game, right? So if you want, feel free to mention that one too.
Sure. Well, I said that there are certain times when online is a little bit more difficult to use the psychological side, right? But yes, there was one very funny situation, because I'm sitting since a while on a cash game table, and there is a new player that just gets in. And when the new player gets in, if he wants or she wants, we don't know who's behind the nickname. They can they don't have to wait the big blind, but they can post the blinds already, and they start playing right away. And so this player was from Canada, but it doesn't really matter. He starts to play and he posts the blind, and I am on the button. And just as a matter of stealing, I have 8 deuce off. Awful hand, one of the most awful hands in poker, right? But I just want to steal, and so I bet. I bet. I mean, he only posts it. He checks when it comes to him, and I bet. And everyone folds back to him, and he calls. So, and I think, okay, well, this guy, what is he calling? He only checks before, so he doesn't have such a strong hand. Flop comes 4-4-9 with 2 diamonds. He checks and I bet.
Okay.
And he 3-bets me, but he 3-bets me pretty big.
Okay.
And I start thinking, well, what the hell? I mean, this guy, what 449 is such a draw, is such a dry board.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think, well, if someone just sat at the table, he doesn't want to lose all his stock, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all in. So that's what I do, because I think he's not gonna call even if he has a strong hand. I mean, because he needs to think that he doesn't want to lose the stock on the first hand. He starts to tank for such a big, I mean, he starts to tank for 40 seconds, but 40 seconds in online is so long.
Yeah.
And in the end, he folds.
Oh,
And
nice.
I have to tell him that I bluffed him, so I showed him a deuce, I mean, with the option.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that's
is,
a little bit how you can use psychology online as well.
yeah, exactly. Super nice. There's one thing I wanted to ask you for the end, as I mentioned. Since you're playing, like, let's say 2 years, you have some moderate, actually really decent success. Do you treat yourself as a poker professional or not? What's your point of view on that? Maybe for the end.
That's interesting. So right now I play in partnership with betkings. So I might say that I'm a poker professional, but if someone asks me at the table, I think I would say, no, I'm not a poker professional.
Okay.
And I think it's more the truth. I mean, let's say, when I play, I try to play professionally in the sense that, yes, I get fun. I'm glad to play the game. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I try to really maximize profit. I don't just sit at the table, I mean, and look at the stars. So in that sense, I try to play as professionally as I can. And in that sense, I also, as I said, I study the game. I studied books. I discuss hands all the time. I try to revise the situations where I've been in. I keep the statistics, both live and online. So in that sense, I try to be as professional as I can. But at the same time, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I have a company. I have other activities. So I use poker in a way, if you want, as an investment. I decided, I mean, last year that I wanted to try this investment. I saw that this investment was profitable. I think that maybe in the future, especially if I'm able to win some big amount of money, I can invest this money into my company. That's also part of the idea. Maybe it never happens, but in any case, I mean, nothing to lose. And so that's a little bit the idea, and how I see myself. And I think there are many people like this that can see poker as a semi-professional activity.
And it's nice, like, I mean, obviously, to have, like, maybe, as you said, you're an entrepreneur, you have your own company, and I mean, not really keeping it as a hobby, maybe your passion, and still being serious while you play, even though you don't play all the time, right? And I think it's the right attitude for a lot of people nowadays, to kind of try it out, see how it goes. And even later on in the future, you can invest more time in it, more money, right? More knowledge, learn more, and see how it feels.
I think it works like almost in every discipline in life. You have to understand if you adapt to that discipline, to that contest or not, and then what are your limits. That's the most important thing, I think in poker. You have to establish your own limits and say, okay, this is my limit, I don't go over that.
Exactly.
Because that's when it becomes sick, is only when you go beyond your own limits. But it's up to you to decide where your limits are.
Yeah, exactly. You have to know that about yourself. Just one funny thing you mentioned, like, at the table, you don't proclaim yourself as a professional. That's kind of a psychology part again, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I prefer, and especially last year, I could say that, no, I only play since a few months, right? And I could say it many times, and this can give an image of very amateur guy on the table.
Yeah, so
yes, of course, it can play it, in my advantage. So, I mean, I've seen many times, I mean, I remember, 3 bets or even 4 bets just to make me fold. But but I'm there to understand the situation. I'm not there to, right? So yes, you could use these things to my help. I remember one situation I can tell you. I remember, so it was a very important, it was a tournament in May last year. I didn't go that far. I think I was around 20th position at the end, but still made good money. And it was in Rosvadov in King's Casino. So, and in the tournament at a certain point, so there is a guy that goes all in on a blank river.
Okay.
And I start to mention hands. So I start to talk to him a lot to understand. There was no time bank, so I could stay until he's gonna call time, right? Or someone else is gonna call time. And I start to talk to him a lot, and I remember that. So basically, the board was 10, 6, 6, deuce 4. Okay, and I have I have ace 10. He has ace king. I will find out only at the end.
Yeah, later.
But basically, it goes all in, trying to represent a bigger pair, and I start to talk to him a lot, asking. So since the board is 10, 6, 6, deuce 4, I ask him, do you have a 6? Do you have 5, 3? And in his mind, he starts to tell me that you really think I would do this action with 5, 3? So basically, he thinks that I'm such an amateur that I don't understand that he might have an overpair. But in fact, I use it in the reverse way. The reason I'm telling all these things is because I want to understand if he really has an overpair or not because I think he has an overpair, right? And in the end, he gives me enough information for me to call, and I call, and he has ace king.
Yeah. So you kind of took that into advantage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so great. I guess we're just gonna conclude it for now. Like, it's been a long interview. Right. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. You seem like a really cool guy, and I love like how you're kind of blending everything that you learned in life, everything that you did into poker, and how you're actually finding a lot of success with it. And
well, thank you very much. Thank you very much to PP Poker. I think, I was really glad. It was a nice time, always nice time to talk about past moments. We didn't talk about mistakes. I have to say, I don't want people to think that I've done everything right. No, absolutely. This is not the case. I made many mistakes, but the most important thing is to learn from your mistakes at the end. That's how you can improve.
I agree, and that's like a nice closing line, I believe. And again, everybody check out the GG WSOP circuit, play if you want. There's a lot of action, there are fun games. And to you, Francesco, I just wish you the best of luck. Have fun with Maria on Twitch channel. Marina, sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
I wish you all the best. I'll check it out. Shout out the channel again, just so everybody hears.
Yeah, Marina Poker Star, double R at the end, on Twitch, or Marina Poker Star 1R on Instagram. We post everything there as well.
Exactly.
And also remember betkings _world if you want to follow YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch.
Okay, have fun, everybody. Bye-bye.
Ciao, thank you so much. Bye.